We can go on the record, Mr. Court Reporter.
On the record, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Today is March 29th, 2022. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. We're here today for Maryland Public Service Commission case number 9509P, which is captioned in the matter of the continuing investigation of the gas purchase power cost adjustment charges of Washington Gas Light Company. My name is Jennifer Grace. I'm the public utility law judge assigned to handle this matter, and we'll start with appearances with the company.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Mira Ahmed, appearing on behalf of Washington Gas, and I believe Your Honor has a motion before you to admit me to this proceeding per hoc feature.
Yes, and that the circuit court granted that motion. And are you also entering the appearance of Mr. Dodge?
No, Mr. Dodge will not be joining us this morning.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning. We'll move to Office of People's Counsel.
Good morning, Your Honor. Michael Sammartino on behalf of Office of People's Counsel.
Good morning, Mr. Sammartino, and staff.
Good morning, Your Honor. Kenneth Albert on behalf of staff.
Good morning, Mr. Albert. All right. We have a couple of maintenance items from the company. Say your name again.
Ahmed, Mira Ahmed.
Ms. Ahmed, do you have some exhibits by way of publications?
Yes, I'd like to have marked as Exhibit 1, Your Honor, the certificate of publication filed on March 28th, 2022, which includes the bill inserts and web posting, as well as social media posts of the notice of public hearing for this proceeding.
WGL Exhibit 1 is marked.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to its admittance at this time?
None from OPC, Your Honor.
No objection, staff.
Okay. WGL Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have an attestation on behalf of WGL?
Yes, Your Honor, Washington Gas will be providing 2 witnesses virtually today, and in accordance with the notice issued by the Commission on November 5th, 2021. On behalf of Washington Gas, I would like to attest that both witnesses are in separate rooms and will not be in communication with any individual while on the witness stand for this proceeding.
Thank you. You can go ahead and call your first witness.
Our first witness is Ms. Lucinda Giannini.
Ms. Giannini, can you raise your right hand, please?
Oh, yes.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
Okay, your witness.
Ms. Giannini, by whom are you employed?
Washington Gas.
And how long have you been employed by Washington Gas?
41 years.
And what is your current position?
I'm supervisor of pricing in the Rates and Regulatory Affairs Department.
And Ms. Giannini, did you file direct testimony on January 10th, 2022 in this proceeding, which consists of 13 pages of text and 3 exhibits, LCG 1, LCG 2, and LCG 3?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I have marked for identification Ms. Giannini's direct testimony, WGL Exhibit 2?
It is so marked.
Thank you. Ms. Giannini, was your direct testimony prepared by you or under your direct supervision?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections, changes, or updates to make to your direct testimony?
No, thank you.
And if I asked you these questions, the questions in your pre-filed testimony, would your answers be the same today?
Yes.
And do you adopt this testimony as your testimony in this case?
I do.
Your Honor, I would request that we move witness Giannini's direct testimony and exhibits into the record, subject to cross-examination.
Any objection?
None from OPC, Your Honor.
Hearing no objection, WGL Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Witness Giannini is available for cross-examination.
Mr. Sammartino.
OPC doesn't have any questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Staff.
Staff has no questions for this witness.
Okay, I likewise have no questions for this witness. I thank you for your appearance this morning, Ms. Giannini. And we can move on to the next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Washington Gas calls Ms. Elizabeth Tamanios.
Good morning. Good morning, Ms. Tamanios. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Your witness.
Mr. Manios, by whom are you employed?
Washington Gas.
And how long have you worked at Washington Gas?
3.5 years.
And what is your current position with the company?
I'm the senior manager of energy acquisition.
And do you have a copy of your direct testimony, which was filed in this proceeding on January 10th, 2022, which consists of 16 pages of text and one exhibit ELT1?
Yes.
And did you also file a confidential version of that direct testimony and exhibit?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would request that Mr. Manios' direct testimony be marked for identification as WGL3 and the confidential version as WGL3C.
Both are so marked.
Mr. Manios, did you also file rebuttal testimony in this proceeding on March 4th, 2022, which consists of 6 pages of text and no exhibit?
Yes.
And do you have a confidential version of that rebuttal testimony?
Yes.
Your Honor, please, may we have marked for identification Mr. Manios' rebuttal testimony as WGL4 and the confidential version as WGL4C.
WGL4 and 4C are marked.
Mr. Manio, were your direct and rebuttal testimonies, both the public and confidential versions, prepared by you or under your direct supervision or control?
Yes.
And do you have any changes or updates to make to those testimonies?
Not at this time.
If I asked you the same questions that are in your pre-filed testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
And do you adopt this testimony as your testimony in this case?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would request that to move witness Manios' direct and rebuttal testimonies and exhibits into the record in this proceeding subject to cross-examination.
Any objection?
None from OPC, Your Honor.
No objection from staff.
WGL exhibits 3, 3C, 4, and 4C are admitted.
Mr. Manios is available for cross-examination, Your Honor.
Mr. Sammartino.
Thank you, Your Honor. OPC has a few questions for this witness. Good morning, Ms. Tumanios.
Good morning.
So earlier today, OPC provided Washington Gas's counsel with 2 documents marked OPC Exhibit 1 and OPC Exhibit 2. Exhibit 1 is Washington Gas's response to OPC Data Request 1-9, and Exhibit 2 is a confidential spreadsheet showing the results of Washington Gas's RFP for its RSG pilot. Are you familiar with these documents?
Yes.
And do you have them available?
Yes.
Great. So OPC we has a few questions about the responsibly sourced gas that the company purchased during the period under review. That's a new product at the commission, so we have a few questions about it. But before I get into that, I'd like to go over some fundamentals regarding the company's traditional procurement methods. So,
Mr. Sammartino, can I interrupt for one moment? Both of the exhibits have some confidential materials. Are we going to be able to go through this without having to go in a confidential session, or are you going to ask some questions that we'll need to go into session?
Your Honor, the majority of my questions are not confidential. There is one line of questioning that is, and I will indicate when I get to that point that we need to go on the confidential record.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Tumanios, so one method by which the company acquires gas is through a firm contract. Is that correct?
Yes.
And a firm contract means that the company is agreeing to obtain a fixed quantity of gas for the duration of that contract. Is that correct?
Yes.
And another method of obtaining gas is through a swing contract. And the swing contract means that it refers to a contract that provides a minimum and maximum amount of gas where the specific daily delivery quantity is variable. Is that correct?
Yes.
And under a swing contract, who determines the quantity of gas that is actually delivered? Is it the purchaser or the supplier?
The purchaser.
And can you briefly describe why the company might choose a firm contract over a swing contract or vice versa?
It depends on the company's load profile and how often they would need that supply.
Okay, thank you. And as for prices under contracts, those are set based on different price indices. Is that correct?
Yes,
And suppliers can add a premium or a discount to the index price, correct?
yes,
And some bids are based on different indices than others. And so does the fact that a price is based on one index as opposed to another influence your evaluation of a bid?
yes.
Could you explain that a little bit more?
The index is the locational price of the gas. Gas typically purchased at a certain location will have pricing that matches the locational index. In some instances, it might, or a supplier might choose to provide a different locational index. Based on where the location is, prices might behave differently in the market.
Okay, thank you. So to tie all that together, would it be accurate to state that Washington Gas relies primarily on four main factors in evaluating procurement bids, these factors being quantity, contract type, whether it's firm or swing, location, and price?
I'll add one more. I'll say yes and add one more, which will just be the time or like the frequency.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'd like to turn to the issue of responsibly sourced gas. So on page 12, on lines 18 to 20 of your direct testimony, you define responsibly sourced gas as gas that has been verifiably produced according to best practices, which demonstrates lower carbon intensity than achieved on average. So could you clarify what you mean by best practices in this context?
Best practices is determined by the certifying entity, but what we look for is a certifier who is assessing the methane emissions intensity at the particular production location.
And with these certified entities, there's more than one certified entity out there. That's correct?
Yes.
And so between these different entities, are the best practices identical, or is there some variation between certifier?
The protocols for the certifications are different for the respective certifying entities, or can be different. And their methodologies for assessing the best practices also may be different.
Okay. And so since given the differences in the variation between these certifiers' best practices, it's correct to state that each certifier has a different minimum standard that's needed to earn that certification.
Yes.
So are you aware of any process for stakeholder input in setting and evaluating these certification standards?
I'm not.
Has the Maryland Commission or any other regulatory commission that regulates Washington Gas issued any guidelines about certification standards?
No.
And for these certification standards, there are different levels or tiers of certification, so to speak. Is that correct?
Yes.
And are you familiar with Project Canary and the TrustWell certification standard?
Yes.
And are you aware that Project Canary and TrustWell are the same entity? That is, that Project Canary implements the TrustWell certification standard?
Your Honor, I would like to object to this line of questioning. I don't believe this is part of Mr. Marnios's testimony. It goes
I'll allow it.
beyond that.
Overruled.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Tumanios, in response to OPC's data request, you also state that the certification process requires credible and transparent supporting data for effective differentiation, along with the commitment to continuous improvement. Could you clarify what you mean by credible and transparent supporting data?
Project Canary specifically uses real-time monitoring equipment. That's at the data or at the well site. So real-time data is being collected from producers.
So this data is provided by the it's provided by the gas producer to the certified entity, or that. Thank you. And so, does the purchaser have the opportunity to review this data when it evaluates its bids?
It depends, but no.
Okay. So now I'd like to turn to the process of procuring responsibly sourced gas. And I understand that Washington Gas's procurement of RSG was only a 3-month pilot, but I'd like to dig a bit deeper into Washington Gas's approach to its procurement. Are there any written industry standard practices for procurements of RSG?
No.
Did Washington Gas receive any assistance from any third parties in developing its request for proposal and evaluating responses?
Washington Gas uses its standard practices for issuing an RFP for certified gas.
Okay, so now if you could reference the document marked as OPC Exhibit 2. This page contains the responses to Washington Gas's request for proposals for RSG. And on this spreadsheet, there are 3 price-related columns. There's the price index column, the price adder and discount, and certified adder and discount. Could you explain what the price adder discount refers to and the certified adder discount refers to?
Sure. So we discussed the price index. So a supplier had an opportunity to select the index, which they wanted the gas to be the locational index, and then whether it's a monthly or daily index, that's shown in the price index column. Under price adder or discount, that's part of a standard RFP process. The supplier can add a premium or discount to the relevant index. We, in this case, wanted to break out the cost of the certification. So we asked the producer to provide a separate breakout for the certification adder or discount for the company's benefit.
Okay, and how much did these adders or discounts to the index price factor into your purchasing decision?
It was the driver.
Okay. Now, supposing bids with premiums were the only option available, would Washington Gas have evaluated these bids differently against its procurement of more conventional gas products?
We didn't have to deal with that in this case.
Okay. So these next questions I have are going to ask about a few specific bids. So we'll need to go on the confidential record here, Your Honor.
Okay, hold on just a second. For anyone who may be watching this on YouTube, we're about to go in a confidential session, which means we're going to be ending this YouTube feed and we'll be starting a new one. I assume I'm going to go ahead and do that.